I'm back. Let's get comfortable in this extremely squeaky chair. I hope it doesn't squeak too much. Anyway, hi, it's me, Deb, and we are back with another video. It's another Paint and Ponder. If you have not been here before to my channel, welcome. If you're subscribed, welcome back, babe. And this week I have Mike again. Last week, if you watched my video, it was super. I was not very high energy. In fact, I was the lowest of energies I've ever been. And the reason why is my mom had been in the hospital. Things were very dicey for a while and scary, but she is so much better now. So I just wanted to let you know, if you watched last week and you were concerned, she's doing way better. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being where she's feeling her best, she's like 8.5, maybe an 8. Her appetite still isn't super great, but she's doing so much better. So thank you if you hung out with me last week and left a comment and all that kind of stuff. I really didn't expect anyone to watch last week's video. It was super unplanned. It was an unboxing. I still had fun making it, and it was a lot easier for me to edit and go through. And if you watched, there were quite a few of you that watched like the whole thing, and like that was really sweet of you. So I appreciate that, and left lovely comments about the awesome products that I had bought from other artists and from my own new merch stuff. So I appreciated all that, and for the well wishes. And my mom appreciates it too, although I don't think I've shared with her that the YouTube community, who's so kind and sweet, offered their well wishes, but I will pass them on. Today's Paint and Ponder, we are going to be talking about, so here's a trigger warning. If you didn't, listen, I feel like it's a little silly to give a trigger warning when the title says it all, but if you didn't read the title of the video, we are talking about mental health, mental illness, and creativity, and why mental illness and creativity seem to be linked, and what's up with that. I'm going to share my own personal experiences with mental health, things that have helped me, my own struggles with dysthymia, which is like a chronic depressive state, which I'm not always in. Like currently I'm feeling really good. I've been taking very good care of myself, and considering all the stressors that have happened since I'd say last fall, we've had some serious stuff happen with our loved ones, and even my business and stuff like that. Like there's been a lot of heavy stressors that practicing all of the self-care techniques that I have in my toolbox have helped me immensely. That includes therapy, whether that's the talk therapy when I go to my therapist, because yes, I go to one. Taking care of myself nutrition-wise. Exercise I'm not too consistent with, but definitely like I will share what has helped me, but especially like creating, art making has been very helpful. But also the struggles I've had with anxiety, different medications I've been on and off, and good therapy, bad therapy, and then good therapy again. Yeah, the trigger warning is if you are really, you're like, listen, I can't deal with this stuff today. That's cool. I will see you next week. But what I really hope is that whether you personally deal with mental health struggles, or you're struggling with a mental illness right now, you have in the past, you feel confused about it, especially if you are a creative person, because it seems to be like interlaced in a way, like creative brains seem to work a little differently. But I hope it also helps you if it's not you directly dealing with mental health issues, with a loved one who struggles with this, and to maybe better understand and show a little more empathy. But anyway, we're going to talk about that stuff, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to this morning. I was having my coffee and watching Ellie, who, if you don't know, is the lazy redhead. I'm the lazy Deb head with bedhead, but she's the lazy redhead. And so this morning I'm drinking my coffee, watching Ellie, and I'm going to roll the beautiful bean footage here of me. I was so shocked by this. And this was filmed in real time. I just want you to know that's a complete lie. It was not.
This is me reacting to Ellie, reacting to me, reacting to her art.
She shared a clip of me from my unboxing video last week, reacting to opening her art prints, and she was reacting to my reaction, and now I'm reacting to her reacting to me reacting. And if we can just keep the ball going, Ellie, we're just going to keep this spinning. It's going to be reacting to reactions, to reactions, to reactions. It's going to be like a mirror facing another mirror, like opens a portal of infinity. It's going to be crazy. We're going to drum up some creative spirits and deities through this portal. I feel it. I'm manifesting it. You don't have to keep it going, Ellie, I promise you. Also, I'd like to shout out to Melissa Martin for hosting a banger of an art hang party last night. She does it on Thursday nights. It's live on YouTube and Twitch. I watch it on YouTube, and last night I just kind of have my teeny tiny sketchbook and sketching in that, and she had picked the theme of birds and fish. And she dedicated it like a shout out to me. Thank you, I'm honored. Based on the fact it was birds and fish, because I've made the comment quite a few times that I believe fish are the birds of the sea, and that birds are the fish of the air. You know, the fins, the wings, the colors. I think I'm onto something. I do. These are far out thoughts with Debbie. All right, let's get into the video, and I will see you at the end.
Okay, it is me, the voice of Debbie, here to talk about mental health. Oh boy. So first things first, I think it goes without saying that I am not a doctor. I am not giving you medical advice or psychiatric advice, psychologically sound advice. I'm just going to be going over some things that I have dealt with personally in my own life, and I'm going to try and be as frank as possible without getting too dark and scary. But, you know, when you're talking about depression and stuff, it can go to dark and scary places, so just a heads up. Yeah, let's just get into it. So, with my personal history, I've dealt with anxiety and depression. I thought I only got diagnosed after I had had a baby with postpartum depression. But looking back at that time, I realized, holy crap, I've dealt with this my whole life. And I'm talking about even from being a little kid. Not big time depression or anything, but just moments of just feeling like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And truly, this was kind of a running theme of my whole childhood and my adult life. So I can safely say I've always felt a little weird, left of center, and just, thinking differently. And I don't know, I just never really, I always felt like the weird, immature kid. Like everyone else seemed to have their act together, not me. And some of that led to definitely some anxiety, but that all really ramped up, I would say, with puberty. So like by the time I was like 12, 13, 14, like those, and 15 was 13 and 15 were probably two of the toughest years. I just remember having such a hard time, and anxiety was big just because when you're in high school, well, number one, just trying to fit in with people will cause anxiety when you're constantly trying to mask your weirdness, which is what I felt like I had to do, and constantly having it pointed out to you that you are a weirdo. Which my close friends, like, they were also pretty goofy and weird and accepting. So it's like they were cool with me, but I was still just like, I think I was the weirdest of all my little close-knit friends. Like, and all the kids that were like normal and had it together and were like doing well in school, it's like they're the ones that really were like, what is with this kid? She's weird, she doesn't have her act together. And yeah, so what the heck was I saying? So so it really ramped up in those years. But I mean, it's like the whole school environment, trying to fit in, the idea of like teachers in high school put a lot of pressure on kids to do really, really well because everything's going on your school record and it's going to show up when colleges are looking at your applications. Like, that was pounded into our heads. It's still pounded into kids' heads today, which I have a big problem with because I'm like, it's not true. I mean, unless you are like terrible and causing big problems at school and you're getting suspended and expelled, different story. But other than that, I'm like, you know what, if you forgot to hand in your math homework a few times, the college application process is going to go fine. Don't worry about it. But the pressure of that, trying to fit in, let's see what else. And just, I think I really dealt with a lot of depression because my self-esteem was just not great, because I think I was trying so hard to fit in and just didn't. And I definitely dealt with some OCD. Just, you know, I don't know. It's OCD will creep back in for me when I'm in times of high stress. And for me, it's more of magical thinking like, if I do this thing an even number of times, things will start to work out the way I want them to. But if I go an odd number of times, like an odd number of steps or whatever it is, like things are going to go wrong. Like, it sounds cuckoo bananas, and it is, but it's just that weird. There's so many different types where they're dealing with trying to stay clean, like keep their hands clean all the time, or counting or turning on and off light switch. There's so many different kinds. So mine happened to be more of the magical thinking kind. There's also OCD where people deal with like religion, like they get really into trying to follow religion really closely, like sticking everything by the rules. But mine was more of the magical thinking. So that creeps up every once in a while, but I feel like I'm onto it. And when I recognize, like, it happened recently when my mom was in the hospital and I was on hold, and I started doing like magical thinking things like, if I'm on hold for 30 seconds, things will be okay. But if I'm on hold for like 31, you know, and then I was like, what are you saying? You know, it's like, I kind of stopped and I observed my thinking. I was like, girl, what are you talking about? No matter how many seconds you're on hold, even or odd, it doesn't affect anything. But, so anyway, the first time I was diagnosed with depression was after I had my oldest child, Jack. And I was in a funk that I just could not get out of. And it was when my 6-week checkup, like 6-week postpartum checkup, my OBGYN had prescribed Zoloft for me. When I took that, I felt like the clouds parted. And I wasn't, I mean, it took a couple of weeks, but I felt like I could function. And like, things didn't seem so doom and gloom. And most of my depression usually comes from extreme bouts of anxiety, and then afterwards I'm so exhausted from being in that hypervigilant state that like my body and mind just goes into a depressive state. That's because they're kind of like cousins, anxiety and depression. I was on that for maybe a year or so, and I think I remember my grandmother had passed away when Jack was like, my one grandmother had passed away when he was 10 months old, and I remember I couldn't even cry at the funeral. Like, there was something about Zoloft, and this can happen with other antidepressants, that like I couldn't feel full emotions. Like I couldn't feel the full range. Like I could feel positive. Like I knew this was sad. I knew I felt sad, but I couldn't cry. And that just felt like it was unhealthy to me. And at about a year, I decided to, I talked to my doctor, weaned myself off it properly. And I didn't feel like I needed anything until a few years later. So I think Jack was like 3 or 4. I was having a tough time again. I was having a lot of dark thoughts and depression, and I knew I needed to talk to somebody. So I did go to a therapist at that point, and her name was Lori, and she was lovely. And I did go back on medication, and this time I think we had tried Zoloft again. And then after that, I had taken Lexapro, and I kind of had the same issues again. And then the other thing was, I think with Lexapro, what happened was I started gaining weight, and I have no idea why some antidepressants can cause weight gain for people, but it could also have been that I was just eating junk. I don't know, but it was frustrating because I went to the OBGYN and I was like, I don't know, I've put on like 10 pounds and I can't figure it out. And he's like, oh, that's the Lexapro. And I immediately, complete vanity reasons, was like, well, get me off of this stuff. So I weaned myself off of that. I don't remember if I had like all of a sudden dropped weight again, but it doesn't matter. I was having the same issues of like that numbness. So I don't know if it was the amount, the milligrams, whatever, or the formula, who knows? It just wasn't working for me. I may have gone back on Prozac. I don't remember. I think I just tried to white knuckle it, like through any time I was going through depression. And usually it has to do more seasonally for me. In the summer, I'm usually doing great. Not perfect, but it's like I'm way better than the fall and the winter and like the dark gray rainy days of spring. And then let's see, so many years later, when I had my twins, Jack and the twins are 5 years apart, I was really scared about postpartum depression happening again because I had never experienced something so tough. And I had like talked to my OBGYN about that, and we had decided like if I need the prescription, they're going to put me on it as soon as possible. Like, don't delay, because I was just really scared that history would repeat itself. Turned out I was fine. I was actually great, and I didn't need anything until I think there were about 3 or 4 that I started having a tough time again. And I went on Wellbutrin, or I went on Prozac for a while. It wasn't working as well, and then I was put on Wellbutrin. And Wellbutrin actually had the adverse effect on me, like the effect where you have the thoughts of not wanting to be alive anymore. The worst side effect you could possibly have. And that was like a few days into taking it, I think like a week. And I was like, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I really thought that I was completely losing it, and I was scared of my own thoughts. I realized that this definitely was the medication talking and not my own thoughts. Like, it was affecting my mental status. So I immediately called my doctor. We got me off of that immediately, and I think I just stayed on Prozac by itself. Eventually, I went off of that again. I'm back seeing a therapist now as I think 4 years ago. I've been seeing her on and off, and she's amazing. It's a different therapist than the one before. But before that, I had seen another therapist, And I hadn't seen one for years because I had a terrible therapist. Her name was Patricia, and she was awful. And her suggestion to me was, I think you're depressed because you stay at home. You know, you're like a stay-at-home mom. You have nothing to do. This isn't exactly how she said it, but it was like, I was like in tears and hyperventilating. She's like, I think you just need to get or maybe go back to school, or, you know, like if you're thinking about a part-time job, you know, I think that's what you need. I think that would help you a lot. I'm not saying that that's not wrong, but I was in such a devastated place that was not helpful. And it was sort of like she was giving me a canned answer and not seeing that I was falling apart. And this was while I was on Wellbutrin, and like she didn't notice, like, maybe your medication isn't the right fit. Like, I just was very disappointed she didn't pick up on those things. I'm not saying that it was all her fault or anything, but I did not go back to her after, like, that was like my third session with her. I was like having a meltdown, and she was just sort of like super chill, like, I think you need a hobby. Have you thought about knitting or going back to school? No, bitch, that's not the problem. So after that, I'm seeing my therapist Carrie now on and off for the last 4 years. She's probably been one of the most amazing, helpful therapists, and she does do art therapy also, which is one thing that I never expected to be so helpful, because it gets you out of your head when you don't have the words for your emotions and you're just in a zone of making something, and you're not making something representational, just kind of like splashing colors onto a paper, or whether it's with crayons, paint, whatever. And then afterwards talking about either how you felt, or like whatever you created, what the feeling is giving you. So you're looking at this messy blob or whatever, and it's like the edges over here kind of represent how I feel when I'm stressed, and this part over here is kind of what I want to feel like. This calm area of like pinks and lavenders make me feel this is what I want to feel like, but these jagged red edges are what I feel like when I'm angry and stressed. It's hard to explain unless you've kind of gone through it, but I have had some of the most powerful therapy sessions doing art therapy, and I can't explain it. And she's basically been like, the reason it works is because you're out of your head and you're not in a logical mindset trying to explain what's going on. But other things that I have done as far as like right now, I haven't been on any sort of SSRI antidepressant for a few years now, just because the same issues of it works for a while and then it doesn't. And if I need to go back on them again, though, I'm not going to wait. I would not wait too long. It's important for me to listen when it's time to do that kind of stuff. But I do take things like ashwagandha, a lot of B vitamins. For me, like, I also deal with migraines, and usually people who have severe migraines, and it kind of runs in the family, have a very hard time absorbing folate, which is, I think, B9, and it also affects your mood. So like my mom, my grandmother, my sister, we've all dealt with depression and migraines, and we probably all are low in folate. So I do take that now. My sister takes it as well. I don't think my mom takes it, but I mean, she takes like a multivitamin. So ashwagandha has been very helpful. That is just a natural herb that is really helpful for anxiety. And iron, because I just am naturally sort of, what's it called when you're low in iron deficient, so I have like a natural iron deficiency. So does my mom, so it kind of runs in the family. But that helps a lot too. Aside from that, art making is so helpful for me. It's one of those things that has been kind of life-changing, because I feel like I'm in a flow state there, and I feel like so much freer when I'm making art. I didn't even get to the topic of why are creative people tend to have mental illness, or why mentally ill people seem to be drawn to art making. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I don't think it's always connected, but I do think that creative people, and I can say this for myself, that I'm basically an empath, and when someone's around me and they're feeling a certain way, or if I walk into a room and the vibe is off, I feel it. And a lot of people who are similar in that way are usually creative. And it's like we pick up on the vibes of people, places, things. It's like it's the boundary of like our soul is very porous. It's hard to explain, but it's like things around you creep in. So when someone's upset, I feel it, and I feel it hard. And happy and excited, I feel that too. And I think it's one of the reasons like creative people are usually very sensitive to emotions and feelings. We're just a little more in tune, where our antennas are like up, but the antennas are like everywhere around our body. And I think we're just so much more susceptible to feeling all the things around us, feeling what's going on in the world, and we just feel things way more intensely. And I think it also is why we think so much more outside the box, and why we make these weird connections. Like people with ADHD, such as myself, tend to have like all the things lit up in their brain. So you're not all the time, but it's like you're making more connections than, say, someone who's much more streamlined, logical mindset. You know, my husband is not, he's like got his shit together, and I'm a hot mess. I mean, that's how I always put it. But like the thing where I'm going like, birds are the fish of the air and fish are the birds of the sea. Like, I'm making these silly connections that I'm sure I'm not the first person who's thought of that, but it's like, it's silly stuff like that, but it's like, it's what will, you know, it's why a comedian can make a joke, because they're observing human behavior and how silly it is sometimes, and artists are observing the world around them, and we're taking it all in, and we're trying to express what we see on paper, in ceramics, through performing, through knitting, through painting, whatever your medium is. So, or writing, whatever. Or musicians, you know, I think it's just a way to express all those feelings. I feel like people, or at least in my case, when I have kind of tamped down my creative part of me, I think that led to probably my deepest, darkest days. I did mention it in a video, Paint Ponder, where I talked about how I started selling my art, and I was definitely dealing with some dark days before I got back into being an artist, because I had really put a lid on my art making, because as far as the world was showing me, and you know, people would tell me, it's like, you can't make it as an artist unless you know people, you have connections, or you're a graphic artist and work with some kind of design firm. I don't know, but which I don't think is true, by the way. I think you can actually make a living as an artist without being in those professions. But I know that not being true to myself as a creative person and masking my weirdness by trying to be like, yes, I'm a normal adult human, just like you guys. Because as an adult, I was feeling just as weird and out of place when I was a new mom, hanging out in like mom and me groups and all that kind of stuff, or going to a PTA meeting, I was like, I don't fit in here. And it was like, I didn't know if I was just immature or what. And when I've worked at different jobs, whether it was sales or working in restaurants, I just, it's like, if I couldn't be creative, I wasn't being me. I wasn't living my full life. I wasn't like living out loud. I was living with duct tape over my mouth. It's like I was just trying to get by being quote unquote normal. And to be clear, I don't think that you have to be mentally ill or have dealt with mental illness to be creative. That's absolutely not true. That's a farce. Mental illness and creativity have often been linked together and like romanticized. And I think that's super uncool, but I think it's also like a good thing people are talking about it, I mean, I think we all know like Vincent van Gogh struggled immensely with mental illness, and there's so many different artists. So, but I think it's that, especially when and I think for a lot of people, when they do express themselves creatively through whatever sort of art making, music, visual arts, performing arts, whatever, I think that sometimes so many creative people are misunderstood. And that is another tough part. That's a whole other subject. But, getting back to the differently wired minds of like, if you have ADHD like me, anxiety, depression, or if you're just like super hyper and excited about things all the time and people think you're weird and immature and like way too loud and way too big for them, first of all, they're not the people for you. I've been told I'm too loud and too much for most of my life. But I learned that that's also a good thing. And the more I am myself, the more I'm attracting like my people and even like my customers. It's like, it's just, you gotta be yourself because everybody else is already taken, as Oscar Wilde once said. It's a great quote, and it's just, I believe in it wholeheartedly. And listen, if your brain works differently, just know that that's a good thing. It's actually a blessing in many ways, because you're going to come up with new, amazing ideas. You're going to be the one that like problem solves and all that kind of stuff. We need people like us out there.
Okay, we're back. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment down below. Don't feel pressured to share personal stories unless you want to, because I'm all ears. And if you feel like there's a link between your differently wired brain, whether you've been clinically diagnosed as on the autism spectrum disorder, if you have anxiety, depression, bipolar, OCD, ADHD, if you have any of those things, I'm not laughing that I think these things are funny, by the way. I'm just listing off all these things, like the side effects of being an artist could involve OCD, talk therapy, needing to have a mental breakdown every 5 minutes, constantly questioning your art, having imposter syndrome, and or gas and diarrhea. My point is that if you have these things, please don't feel like you have to comment personally on those things. If you're open to sharing your own story, please feel free to. And anyone that's in the comments that wants to be mean will be kicked out. This is a safe space. I'm interested in having a cozy, comfy community here where people can talk openly about these things. I feel like mental illness should be destigmatized. It's been stigmatized for way too long. The more we talk about it, the less freaky deaky it is. Well, thank you so much for being here. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it so much. If you like and comment on the video, thank you. Also, real quick, if you're still here, I'm on the road to 500 subscribers. We only need 25 more, and then I can share with you my terrible, horrible, no good sketchbook. That is awful. It is the worst. All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Love ya. See you next week. Bye-bye.